Hello and welcome to Geography Rocks. In today's lesson we're going to be looking at resource management, and you will need to have done some preparation work before you start this particular film. Please make sure that you've already watched the sessions 1 to 4 on resource management on YouTube. They will help provide the information you need to complete the booklet that you have been emailed. If possible, you should have printed out the resource booklet. However, I appreciate it's quite a big document and therefore you can use paper and pen as we go along. The video will pause every now and then to enable you to have time to complete tasks. At the same time as having this video on, I would recommend that you have Caboodle or a revision guide in the background to support your learning. It's preferable not to simply just watch the video through, stopping and taking notes as we go along. If you've done the sessions 1 to 4 and you've got the resource booklet and revision booklet open, then hopefully it will all come together for you quite nicely. So let's make a start. You should have the Challenge of Resource Management booklet with you. If you haven't, make sure you've got paper and a pen. Please use different colour pens to make sure that your notes are really colourful and engaging. And also bear in mind, we rarely cover this topic again. It is normally a topic that is covered over the summer and it is down to you to self-learn the information. An important piece of information that I would write on the front of your booklet, as well as your name and your teacher, is the fact that we focus on energy. So in the exam there will be 3 different questions and it will be your job to make sure that you do the energy question in the main exam. So let's make a start. The first question in your booklet says, what is a resource? This is followed by, what are the 3 most important resources? You're then asked to use a map to describe the distribution of malnourishment across the world. You need to understand what undernourishment is, and you need to think about why water is important. Pause here, look through your resources and see if you can answer those questions yourself. In addition, if you haven't got the resource booklet, write out those questions or divide your page up in some sort of way that you're going to record your answers in a way that will make sense in a year's time when you revise. Pause now. Welcome back. Hopefully you've taken some time to explore those questions, so let's go through and think about the sorts of answers that you've given. Hopefully you've written something along the lines of the fact that a resource is a stock or supply of something that has a value or a use. It can be food goods, it can be wheat, it can be oil, it can be any resource that has a value. Coal, iron ore, anything like that. What are the 3 most important resources? Hopefully you've established that they are food, energy and water, and these are the 3 most important resources to us in order to succeed in life and to thrive. The third question asked us to use a map. So this is the map that they were asking us to consider, and hopefully you have identified the following. Global undernourishment mainly occurs in Africa, and if you look at the continent of Africa in the middle there, you will see it is largely coloured in red or sort of a dark deep burgundy red colour, and it shows that Africa largely suffers from undernourishment, not having enough calories to fulfill their daily tasks. It says some 15 to 24% of southern Asia is also undernourished, and less than 5% across North America, Europe, Russia and Oceania. So undernourishment is when people do not have enough nutrients for health and growth. So they are having food, they're just not having enough calorie intake in order for their bodies to thrive, and they're not often getting the right nutrients, a balanced diet at the same time. Why is water important? Without good quality water, people will suffer from illness and diseases, and that's going to affect their ability to work, and that in turn will affect the growth of the economy. It's about thinking about the knock-on effects. If you are unwell or you don't feel physically fit, you're not able to give your best at work, and if you can't give your best at work, then your job is not going to be done as well as it could be, and you won't make as much money for the company that you could have done, and so it's going to have an impact on the economy down the line. Pause for a moment, check you've got this information, and then move on. Okay, so we're looking at questions 6 to 8 in the resource booklet now. Question 6 asks us to use maps C and the pie charts in D, page 257. It should look like this, to describe the likely areas of water scarcity and how this links to a country's income. Question 7 asks us to consider why is energy consumption increasing, and 8 asks us to use the graph on page 257 to describe the pattern of global energy consumption. Let's make a start on question 6 and see how we go. So take a look at the map and just take some time to think about what is it showing me, and do this in the exam as well. It's really important that you take 15 to 20 seconds to see the map and think, what is that about? So it says at the top, it is projected areas of water scarcity by 2025. That word scarcity means that by 2025, water is going to be hard to find. Let's look at the colours and make sure we understand what they show. So the grey shows little data. So up in Greenland, we've got little data about what that shows. The yellow areas, so if you look at where we are in the United Kingdom and Europe and the United States of America, etc., you can see that there will be little or no water scarcity in those areas. However, as we move towards Africa, you can see that we have some green areas across the Middle East and in northern Africa where there's going to be physical water scarcity, so a lack of water. Deserts, perhaps deserts are going to grow. We call that desertification, don't we, with growth of deserts. And then the pink areas show economic water scarcity. These are countries that cannot afford to exploit water supplies. And you can see that they include large areas of Africa, large areas of South America, and the majority of Australia. So we can see that this is going to have an impact. D says how water use links to a country's income. So if we look at high income countries, you can see that 59% is used for industrial use, domestic use in the home 11%, and agricultural use 30%. However, in low and middle income countries, that sort of flips round, and we've got 82% being used in agricultural use. Technology has made huge advances in agriculture, and therefore with advances there comes less wastage, so water will be being used more efficiently in the high income countries and potentially less efficiently in the low income or middle income countries. Right, so let's have a little think about that first question. Using map C and the pie charts, describe the likely areas of water scarcity and how this links to a country's income. You should have something written along the lines of water scarcity, both physical, i.e. desert, and economic scarcity, i.e. where a country cannot afford to exploit water sources, can be seen right across Africa, South America, Oceania, and southern Southeast Asia. Basically, we've just got North America, Europe and Northern Asia having little or no water scarcity by 2025. Now this is going to have an impact on income. So regarding wealth, the HICs use their water for industry, so 59% is used in industry, and industrial use is going to make the country more money than perhaps agricultural or domestic use would. It then goes on to say that in farming, LICs are using much more water than HICs. High-income countries are largely more efficient with their farming. They've got more technology and therefore use less water but secure a better yield than in low-income countries. And there's only actually 3% difference in domestic use. So in LICs and MICs it's 8%, whereas in HICs it's 11% in domestic use. However, if you think about our own homes and the way that we use water, dishwashers, washing machines, etc., we get more out of our water. They're highly efficient and they require less labour time, which frees us up to work and to do more things. So that gives some idea as to how it's going to have an impact on income. Question 7 says, why is energy consumption increasing? Pause the video here and have a think about why is energy consumption increasing, and then we'll look at the answer together. Pause the tape now. Okay, so question 7 asked us, why is energy consumption increasing? Let's take a look. The response should go along the lines of, as the world is becoming more developed, demand is increasing, which drives economic development and industrialisation. Newly emerging economies are especially increasing in their water use and in energy generally. Question 8 says, using graph E, page 257, describe the pattern of global energy consumption. Let's take a look at that graph. So as you can see from that graph, it shows us, always taking that little bit of time, what does this graph show us? The year along the bottom, so we're going back to 1970 and we're looking at how energy consumption has increased since then. On the left hand side you can see global energy consumption in 1,000 terawatts per hour, and then you can see down the bottom the words OECD. So OECD on the graph are coloured in purple, and they are Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development. Basically, they're 34 of the world's most developed countries grouped together. You've also got the European Union as yellow, the United States as green, China there in blue, India in pink, and other Asia Pacific countries in brown. So you can see how they have grown over time and how much energy they are using. Let's have a little look at the response. It says, all regions are on the increase, including the OECD, which are the world's 34 most developed countries. China's growth has been particularly rapid since 1990. An OECD organisation, it just reminds us what that stands for. An Organisation of Economic Cooperation and Development. It might be worth writing that down in your notes somewhere. So we can see that all countries are increasing with regards to their energy consumption. China have seen a larger growth, particularly since 1990. No countries there are showing a decline in their energy consumption. It will be interesting to see how that graph develops as we move towards sort of 2025, 2050, as countries have pledged to make reductions in their energy use. So it would be interesting to see that graph, in a decade or so's time. Pause the tape now, take some notes, and I will see you when we start the next questions. In this next section of the booklet, we are looking at the provision of food in the United Kingdoms. You should be looking at pages 258 to 259 in the book on Caboodle. And it says there, first question is to use page 258 to complete the spider diagram below to show the reasons why the UK imports so much food. That word import means brings food into the country. So why do we in the UK bring food into the country? Why aren't we growing everything we need ourselves? The second question says, use the map below, there's a similar one on page 259, to describe the distribution of food coming into the United Kingdom. And on this map it just shows us how far the food has travelled. So for example, oranges from California have travelled over 5,000 miles to reach your plate. New Zealand lamb travels over 11,000 miles. Cocoa beans 2,000 miles, etc. So it shows us the distance our food is travelling in order to reach the United Kingdom. If you've got the booklet, then please make a start on the spider diagram. If not, please do remember these notes are going to be important, so take some time to draw that spider diagram out using different colours, making your work look as creative as you can. It will make it more memorable to you when you come to revise this in Easter next year. Pause the video now and have a go at answering questions 1 and 2, and then join me to talk through the answers. Okay, well done. Hopefully by now you've drawn your spider diagram and you've taken a look at the map in the books for question 2. Please make sure your notes are colourful and straightforward and easy to read. It's going to make such a difference in the future. So question 1, you were asked to think about why the UK imports so much food. Demand for choice has really increased. If I go back to the 1970s, really, when I was having Christmases, etc. as a child, we would get quite excited about putting in the order with a fruit and veg man, because we could choose all sorts of fruits and vegetables that we would have over that Christmas period. And we used to have pink grapefruits and kiwis, but they were mainly a bit of a luxury to have them over that Christmas period. We didn't have them every week of the year. But demand has increased, and people now want to have tropical fruits and luxurious foods, and foods which are grown out of season. They want to have them all year round. So you'd expect to have salad in your sandwiches and salad on your plate on a Saturday or Sunday night all of the time now. You expect to have salad in the salad drawer, in the fridge, all of the time. And it can't be grown in the UK. The climate just can't sustain that all year round for everybody. Equally, the climate here is unsuitable for products that we love, like tea and coffee. Banana industry, they often come over to Southampton, but they come from like the Dominican Republic. They need to come from a hot climate. If you think about, the number of bananas your family consumes in a week, they have to come from somewhere, and our climate can't grow them. Equally, supermarkets import cheaper food from overseas. So not only does the climate help the produce to grow cheaper, but the land that they're growing it on is cheaper and more extensive sometimes, and that makes the product cheaper itself. And also labour, to farm those goods and to harvest those goods, it's often cheaper to import it and pay the import costs than it is to pay workers in the United Kingdom to do that work for us. So lots of different reasons as to why we import so much of our food. Question 2 says, use the map below to describe the distribution of food coming into the UK. So you just use that map to explain. So in all examples on the map, long distances are involved. The most is just over, nearly 19,000 kilometres for the New Zealand lamb. All continents are involved, apart from obviously Antarctica. And many are growing tropical produce, for example, the bananas from the Dominican Republic, mangoes from Brazil. So tropical fruits are really important, and salads that are coming up from all over, particularly those with warmer climates. They talk about the beef from Argentina. That's things that we've looked at before when we thought about deforestation and cattle ranching. So hopefully you're already starting to make those links. If we are growing this food and harvesting this food in one way or another, then another area of the environment is possibly being damaged. So you can start to see the links that are being made between us having our dinner and what we want to eat on our plates and the rest of the world. So not only the ecosystems that are damaged, for example, for cattle ranching, but you can start to consider the air miles and the impact that's having on the environment with pollution, etc. But also those positive impacts of people in LICs having work and employment, and therefore the positive multiplier effect that causes those people living in those areas. So remember, when we talk about impacts, it's not always just negative. Often development has negative impacts on the environment. However, it may well have more positive impacts on society in different regions around the world. So it's quite complex. Take time now to pause, make sure you've got all these notes down, and then join me for the next questions on the next page. Okay, so we've been asked here to use the table to produce a pie chart to show the breakdown of the price of imported mange tout, which are like a little green bean, like little peas with inside a little green shuck. Question 3 says, use the table below to complete a pie chart to show the breakdown price of imported mange tout. So it shows us the producer, the person that grows it, the exporter, how much money goes into packaging, air freight and handling, the person that's importing it over perhaps on the UK side, how much the supermarket gets, and then the total price. So it's done as a percentage. So let's just take a little look at the information. 45% of the final price goes to the UK supermarket. 12% goes to the producer, 6% to the exporter, the person that sends it over to the UK, etc. So you can sort of work out where the money is going. Now, you've been asked to draw a pie chart. It is so important that you can do this skill, and I've seen this completed incorrectly a number of times. When you are given the percentage, you need to say to yourself, right, the whole thing is 100%. We know that, don't we? So imagine a cake, you've got the whole cake, it's 100% of the cake is there. When we are drawing a pie chart, we're not thinking about 100%, we are thinking about the number of degrees in that circle. There are 360 degrees in a circle, and that is the whole of the circle. And therefore, what you need to do is in your head say, I've got to go from 100% to 360 degrees. And hopefully you'll be able to visualize that that is an increase of 3.6. 100 times 3.6 is 360. So in order to draw my pie chart correctly, I need to first take those percentages and times each one by 3.6. So 12 times 3.6, 6 times 3.6, 5 times 3.6, 20 times 3.6, and so on. Those numbers that I now get should add up to a total of 360 degrees. It might be out by a degree or so just because we've rounded up or down incorrectly. Don't overly worry about it, but at least you'll be able to create a pie chart that looks more like a pie chart. So at this point, you need to pause the video, you need to do that maths, times all those numbers by 3.6, then you will need to draw a circle and get a protractor and draw the pie chart. If you haven't got a protractor to hand, you might be able to print off a pie chart with the 10% marked on already with little dots, or draw a circle and then just sort of guesstimate to show that you can draw a pie chart without a protractor. It's not ideal, but it's better that you practice at least drawing one and then see how near to the correct one it looks. Pause now. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully your pie chart looks a little bit like this, and you can see that nearly half of the money goes to the producer. You can see that a very thin amount of the money goes on packaging. Air freight gets quite a significant amount of the money, nearly quarter I suppose. So you can see what that pie chart looks like. So hopefully yours looks the same. Let's move on. Question 4 is asking us to consider 2 recent trends in UK farming. So look through your Caboodle book, or your book if you've got it in physical form in front of you, and think about what are the 2 recent trends in UK farming. Pause now, write your answers, and come back to see if they're correct. Okay, welcome back. So 2 recent trends in UK farming. Firstly, agribusinesses, which are intensive farming methods which are used to maximise food produced. So this is where farms are running commercially, they've got high levels of investment, technology and chemicals, and the whole aim is to produce as much of the good as they can. And this can be with regards to animals and rearing animals for meat, and it can also be to do with growing crops for vegetables, etc. 4.2 says organic produce. This is a big increase, people's desire to have organic. Some it's coming through choice, people not wanting to have those chemicals put on their foods, they want to buy organic produce. Some people believe the taste of organic food is better. Some people with a larger disposable income want to just buy the organic produce because they think it's better food and therefore they want to have that instead. So for some people it's a choice about the chemicals, and some people it's more of like an economic choice that they can afford to buy it. So it doesn't use chemicals. This means it's going to be more expensive to produce because you're likely to produce less yield in an area of a field. So if you've got a field and you're using chemicals, you might produce a higher yield of food than if you are growing your food more organically. It can also be expensive because you often need larger labour costs, so more people to look after the crop, and it's often associated with buying local and seasonal produce. So local to us, you might use the local farm shop that would deliver farm boxes with fruits and vegetables that are seasonal. Okay, let's move on. We've got 2 examples here to look at, Linford House and Riverford organic farm shops, and we are considering how they cope with the problems of competing with importing food. So how do they develop? Okay, so in this question 5, we're looking at Linford House Farm and Riverford Organic Farms, and we're looking at how they help to deal with some of the problems of importing food. So you should have read a little bit about Linford House Farm and Riverford Organic Farm. Riverford is one that you might have seen locally. They've got vans that travel around our area, and they do food box deliveries. So let's take a little look. Linford Farm is in East Anglia, and it's got 570 hectares of land. It's an agribusiness, and it requires flat, fertile land. The crops that they grow are wheat, sugar beet and potatoes. There's lots of machinery and chemicals used, plus 54 million litre reservoir that has been built. It has few staff, and it requires largely on technology and machinery. So that's Linford Farm as one example in East Anglia, a large farm which is an agribusiness aiming at growing as much food as it can on the land it has. Whereas Riverford Organics is a different sort of business which began in Devon, supplying local people with dairy and boxes of food weekly. And that sort of developed and grew. Now it works across York, Devon and Peterborough and Hampshire. This model is about reducing food miles and about supporting local farmers. It's about local employment, and they try to encourage a relationship between the grower and the consumer, so you know where your food has come from, you know where your eggs have come from, you know where your chickens come from, you know where your parsnips have been grown, and you're eating seasonal food. And when you're buying that produce, you know that it has been grown organically without the use of chemicals, and that it's had a low environmental impact with regards to transportation to your plate. So the crops tend to be seasonal. There's certainly in Riverford the boxes are delivered weekly, so you can get your food delivered to your door. Both have advantages and disadvantages. Both bring benefits, both have drawbacks. Take some time to write down what each of these farms offer. I'm Mrs. Wingham, and you've been listening to Geography Rocks.